자, 그럼 이제 짧은 휴식을
I hope you enjoyed the break. Let us go on to the next part of the afternoon. We are here at the Global HR Forum 2021. We will now start session A-3, Digital Transformation and ESG. During the previous session, we have also discussed ESG. ESG management is currently in the limelight, and now more attention is being paid to digital transformation. Renewable technology and smart grid technology are the well-known innovative technologies. With ESG management underway, many of the issues that arise from this can be supplemented through these technologies, and these technologies can also be utilized to boost the competitiveness of the companies. During this session, we will take a look at incorporating technologies to ESG management so that we can achieve the goals of ESG as well as find new engines for growth. I think it's great to study through success stories, and that is why we will take a look at some success stories through this session. This session will be moderated by Professor Youngsup of the Graduate School of Engineering Practice at the Seoul National University. Presentations will be by Mr. Hosea, Regional Director at Microsoft Philanthropies, and Mr. Eric Ledger, Senior Vice President of Schneider Electric. Please welcome the session with a big round of applause.
네, 차장님 이어서
We will now turn the floor to our moderator. We are talking about digital transformation and ESG. This is indeed a topic that is perhaps the most important for companies to maintain competitiveness and also to develop further in the future. And so these two elements must be in place for future prospects. And concerning this topic, we have invited two international speakers. We will be listening to their presentations, followed by a panel discussion. As have been introduced, I am Youngsup, Distinguished Professor at the Graduate School of Engineering Practice at the Seoul National University. I am also the Chairman of the Digital Innovation Association of Korea. And until recently, I served as the last minister of the SME Promotion Agency before it became a ministry. Before we begin our session, I would like to touch upon what digital transformation is. Around the world, in the wave of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, digital transformation is at the core. And more recently, ESG came into the limelight. Of course, it did not appear out of the blue. ESG has been discussed ever since we started to talk about inclusive growth. More people became aware of the issues of environment, society, and governance. And net zero became a core topic around the world. And that is why ESG is currently in the limelight. But in achieving ESG, digital transformation will play a major role. So we will be listening to two global companies about how they are achieving digital transformation and ESG goals together. And then after the presentations, we will participate in a panel discussion. The first presentation will be from Microsoft. Is that true? Microsoft will present first? Yes, that is correct. We have one speaker from Microsoft and another speaker from Schneider Electric. Microsoft, as you're well aware, became the company with the highest market capital in the world as of October, overcoming Apple. Microsoft focused on operating systems in the past, but now they have turned their eyes to cloud, and they have become the company with the largest market capital in the world. Schneider Electric works with factory automatization and energy management. They are a world-renowned company in this sector with a headquarter in France, but they are a multinational company. We will first listen to Hosea Lai, who is working in Singapore. He is the Regional Director of the Asia Pacific of Microsoft Philanthropies. So he participates in various ESG projects within Microsoft. Let us listen to Hosea Lai.
Could you share your screen and then please go ahead with your presentation?
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm assuming you can see my screen. My name is Hosea. I am so glad to be in this session. But before I even begin, I would like to ask a very simple question. What is the challenge when it comes to the digital divide? Right? The most recent and of course obvious answer is COVID-19. I know when we always talk about ESG, what is it that we think about? We usually immediately move into the environment part of the work, but we need to remember that digital transformation affects the environment, it affects social, and it affects governance. And today I want to put a bit of focus on the social component of things and what Microsoft is doing and what everyone else can come together to do, especially in situations like this, right? So the COVID-19 pandemic has made a widening skills gap. And today we want to talk about digital skills, which has grown even bigger because of COVID-19. And the impact of the pandemic is affecting the same communities, but made the situation even worse for people from the underserved communities, from people from the underprivileged, from vulnerable groups of people. And the need to do this work is even more important now, more than ever. And we have to do it even faster, and we have to do a lot more if we want to get out of the pandemic in the post-pandemic world, to bring a lot more people with us. And this is who I am. I am so honored to be here. My name is Hosea once again, and I would like to share with you Microsoft's social purpose, right, as part of the broader ESG component, specifically in the area of digital transformation and digital skilling for people in the underserved communities across Asia Pacific. The challenges we are facing as a world is very, very complex, and this work is becoming more and more important today. And that's why I am actually very, very excited to talk to you today. And I will start off with 3 questions to help guide the presentation. The first question is, what is the biggest challenge when it comes to the digital divide? The second question is, what is Microsoft's commitment to addressing this challenge? And the third one is, how can we come together as partners to address this big challenge? And if I were to show you, some data, some statistics in the research that we have done, when COVID started, lockdown policies was actually very, very big, right? It was used to curb the virus, and we've seen lockdowns and reopening, and it's just happening nonstop, especially in the last, since the beginning, and then even in the recent times, in the first half of this year. And the spread of the virus has led to, loss of working hours. When we did the research last year, it was equivalent to about 175 million full-time jobs in Asia Pacific in the first half of 2020. And that the Asia Pacific region is seen, the highest across multiple regions. In some countries in the region, in Asia Pacific, the projected loss of employment can be as high as more than 7%. And even now, the problem is not over, as some countries are still going through the lockdowns and the various times throughout the year. As much as I would love to be with all of you in Korea, the vaccination travel lanes only start on 15th of November, and that's why I have to still do this virtually. And I know it sounds, that the situation does not look very, very good. It's all not just doom and gloom. 18 months of COVID-19, and we have seen fundamental shifts in the world. We have seen an increase in demand for tech-enabled jobs, right? So from an ESG perspective, from a social perspective, we have seen jobs that are increasing, that are tech-enabled, and we have seen actually in recent times, actually very, very recently, in the past few months, we have seen an increase in green economy jobs, right? There's an increase in demand for green economy jobs as well, which are tech-enabled. Not just when I talk about tech-enabled jobs, I'm not just talking about tech companies, right? But we are talking about across different sectors, across different industries, where people need digital skills, where they need the tech skills in order for them to actually survive and have employment. And the global workforce, we are looking at, a projected new creation of about 149 million new tech and tech-enabled jobs in the next 5 years. And by 2025, we are also seeing that companies estimate that 40% of the workers will require reskilling, and there will be an increase in the demand of jobs requiring digital skills. And the question for us that we need to ask right now is whether the supply of labor who are equipped with digital skills is able to meet the demand. Yeah, at the same time, people from underserved communities, excluded communities are consistently underrepresented in technology. COVID, with the economic recession and the digital transformation, has only deepened the digital divide. And the negative impact existed before is not going away anytime soon. As I said, it is not all doom and gloom. On a positive side, if you look at this LinkedIn data for the past 1 year, hiring rates are increasing across a few countries. As you can see, I'm just picking up a few countries like India, Singapore, and Australia, just to call out a few countries. At the bottom left, I've pulled out data showing Gen Z, the population in India, and the share of hires across the different levels of digital skills is on an upward trend since 2018. And COVID definitely did not put a dent in that upward trend. And urgent action is actually required to ensure every person has access to skills, to technology, and opportunity they need to succeed in the changing economy. And the problem we need to solve is huge, right? The COVID-19 health crisis has created a global economic crisis, putting tens of millions of people out of job. And the most vulnerable now must deal with the impact of losing jobs or businesses that are due to COVID. Some jobs lost may not come back or are not fast enough to meet the demand. The jobs that do come back will look very different. People will return to an even more digital economy. We have seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in a mere 2 months. COVID has pushed forward the digital transformation agenda for a lot of companies. It has pushed forward the digital transformation agenda for governments as well, right? What was supposed to be 2 years took 2 months to complete because the whole world was in a lockdown. And as people return to work, both old and new skills will require digital skills. And many jobs will continue to be remote as business continue the rapid digital transformation accelerated by COVID-19. Technical skills will be even more in demand. And this is not just in the office space, right? Office front. On a personal front, I've actually stopped carrying my wallet when I leave my home. I've not actually carried my wallet for the past 3 to 4 months in my life. And I now carry just my mobile phone whenever I leave my home. When I visit a food and beverage establishment, I will pay digitally. And I've had situations where I rejected a restaurant or a shop because they do not have digital options to pay. And that to them is a lost business. Everyone needs to upskill, and I mean literally everyone. And this is creating a skill challenge for individuals and employers alike. People who have lost their jobs will need to gain additional digital skills to find a new job. And employers will need to find and upskill current employees or quickly hire new employees with more digital skills. And successful skilling will require new partnerships to bring technology and people together. And this requires partnerships between companies and employers, non-profit organizations, NGOs, government workforce agencies, who all need to be connected for this effort. And if the world fails to take significant action today by the private sector, by government, to stem the economic impact of unemployment, it will result in huge economic disparity and significant skilling gap across the broader set of the population. And this impact will go beyond the workforce to have a systemic effect on the ability of companies, industries, and communities to realize the full potential of this digital transformation. And at Microsoft, this is our promise. We are committed to provide inclusive economic opportunities. We really need to focus on working with communities, governments, and our nonprofit partners. We are committed to helping people excluded from the digital economy to gain digital skills at different levels, to gain jobs and livelihoods. And what does this mean? You know, APAC is such a diverse region, and the needs of the countries differ greatly. We want to make sure that we provide content at different levels, because in APAC, everyone is on a different stage of the journey of digital skilling and transformation. And we provide content from very basic digital literacy skills to foundational digital skills, right up to skills for tech roles such as cloud and AI capabilities. And how do we do it? At Microsoft, we have an urgent sense of the timeline, and we want to help as many people as possible. And we achieve scale through the work that we do. And the partnership is critical for us to achieve that. There are two approaches to how we are looking at scaling our work. First is through working directly with governments to drive systemic changes. The second is on building the capacities of community partners, non-profit partners, so that they have the means to achieve more. As you can see, partnerships are important. We cannot solve the problem and the challenge alone, and partnerships between people, public and private organizations are critical. And to share some examples, we are working with, for example, the unicorn for Southeast Asia, Grab. We are working with ASEAN Foundation, UNICEF, UNESCO to reskill and upskill learners. Here's an example, as you can see in the picture, of a partnership between Microsoft Thailand and UNESCO, the Thai government, as well as other companies to empower Thai workers on the digital skilling program and journey. And also, when COVID started and became a global pandemic, we not only remove barriers, we also need to change the way people are educated and trained, and the way companies hire and support employees through the careers. That is why Microsoft launched the Global Skilling Initiative. And with the Global Skills Initiative, Microsoft, LinkedIn, and GitHub committed to a cross-company approach to help job seekers gain new skills for a more digital post-pandemic economy. In June 2020, we launched the initiative to reach 25 million people worldwide. Together with our dedicated partners, governments, non-profit organizations, NGOs, we actually helped 47 million people access digital skills. And we have learned from our project, extended and expanded our work. As mentioned, partnerships are critical in order for us to scale. Our customers also see this urgent need and seeking partnerships to create collective impact. We have worked at Microsoft with over 100 customers around the world to drive social impact and focus our work together on building skills and enhancing employability. Since the conference venue is in Korea, I want to highlight that we are collaborating with companies such as SK Telecom together to bring skilling to the underserved communities around the world. And I'll share also some examples of these Microsoft partnerships can achieve the social impact that I've mentioned. With Grab across APAC, many people lost their jobs and turned to become part-time drivers or Grab drivers during the pandemic. Grab and Microsoft came together to provide digital literacy training, targeting about 1 million drivers across APAC. Many of the drivers were in their 40s because they lost their jobs. They were trying and looking at mid-career changes with no tech background nor prior industry domain. Some of the drivers took the basic digital training, got inspired, and went on to deeper skilling. An example here is, if you look at a picture on the top left, it's actually Farhan, an ex-Grab driver who completed the training and is now hired by Grab themselves as a service assurance engineer. And over in India, on the right side, you will see the picture of a partnership we have between Microsoft and SAP India, where we announced the launch of a skilling program to empower young women, students from underserved communities to build careers in technology. The program looks at skilling 62,000 women in areas like artificial intelligence, cloud computing, web design, and digital marketing. And besides running programs, we also address current employment issues brought about by the pandemic through influencing government policies to create conducive digital skills ecosystem. One such example is in Hong Kong. As you can see in this, we know that the airlines industry is one of the hardest hit industries during the pandemic, as countries close their borders and people avoid traveling overseas altogether. The two people you see in the picture are Jackie and Yemi, who are former flight attendants who lost their jobs during the pandemic, found Microsoft's comprehensive learning resources through the skilling program and obtained Microsoft certificates. They have already kickstarted their next career in a digital enabled roles in June this year. And this would not have been possible if the government had not changed their policy to recognize online training as a formal platform for skills acquisition. And drawing lessons from the examples I've shared, I want to talk to you about 3 key ideas that will address the challenges of skills divide and what we can do, even rethinking policies and supporting these ideas. And the first one is to adopt a partnership mindset. And no matter how competent a government or a well-resourced company is, no one can solve a complex problem such as bridging the digital divide on their own. And each sector, company, and organization bring forth different value propositions, but partnerships is never easy, and it's so important for all parties to be very clear about the value each partner brings, what commonalities we share while recognizing our differences. For us at Microsoft, our value proposition is in the area of technology platforms and content, and we know that we have to work with different partners to bring different value propositions to be able to address the challenges effectively. I think it is so powerful if governments create the environment for bigger partnerships and bigger, can create more partnerships to happen. The second piece is to shape the digital ecosystem. And I think that every social issue sits in the larger ecosystem consisting of social political context, legal structure, policy constraints. And when we look at digital skilling, other factors such as socioeconomic divide, employment laws, accessibility to technology, opportunities and networks are important if we want to achieve the eventual outcome of better livelihood. At Microsoft, we are focused in looking at this issue from the perspective of how can we make it easier for people to acquire digital skills. And hence, one of the things that we advocate on bringing digital content to underserved communities as a mobile-first environment. Not many have computers or laptops, but many of the underserved communities actually do have mobile phones, right? We need to work with government partners, corporate partners, and community partners to shift the mindset so that we can bring digital content and skilling into the hands of more people by focusing on what they have instead of what they do not have. And lastly, the third point is to serve the entire value chain of the digital economy. And skills acquisition is just one piece of the jigsaw when you see the whole issue in a bigger context. Employment outcomes and livelihood, and the ecosystem, in order for us to drive better outcomes, we need to consider the whole value chain of how people get jobs. And so these are the things we ask ourselves. What can we do to help a job seeker get a job so that he or she is able to improve his or her livelihood. Once we see the perspective from the end user, other pieces of the jigsaw will fall into place. And this includes career coaching, access to job opportunities, proactive hiring programs, and access to professional networks, so that the underserved communities can have a better chance at getting a job in itself. And this is, as you can see in my presentation, this is a huge challenge. The digital divide is very, very, very real. As much as Microsoft is committed in improving the lives of people through digital skilling, we cannot do it alone. We have to come together. If there's governments or corporates or civil society organizations who is hearing this and you're interested in coming and co-creating programs together, reach out to me and happy to work with you and discuss with you what are the possibilities. Times like this requires us to think very differently to accelerate the efforts and collective action, and we cannot do this alone. Let's think about how we can actually do all this together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your wonderful presentation, Mr. Lai. 다음은
Next, we would like to go on to the second presentation before we go into the panel discussion. The second presentation will be by Mr. Eric Leisure, who is the Senior Vice President of the End-to-End Digital Consumer Relationship Operation Transformation at Schneider Electric.
Start your presentation.
만나서 반갑습니다. 저는 에릭 레이저입니다.
Pleased to meet you. I am Eric Leisure.
First of all, I would like to tell you it's a great honor to be making this panel discussion at this Global HR Forum for Schneider Electric. Today we'll discuss what we are all up against in the market, challenges you may be experiencing yourself alongside your industry peers, and how we may work together to be able to help you meet your very goal on sustainability. Very happy to interact with government bodies, businesswomen, businessmen, and university students who are showing an interest in sustainability future for our planet. Sustainability. Sustainability, we believe at Schneider Electric, is our passport to operate in the future. For us, sustainability is not just a priority. It's not just a paradox. It's not as well our hope for someday. Sustainability is our business, is our purpose. It's who we are. And we set ambitious targets and sustainability actions around the world every single day to progress towards a better planet, the planet we share. Companies might be at different stages of their own sustainability journey. They might have different means, work in different industries, and for Schneider Electric included, they might have opportunity to extend their impact beyond the scope of what is expected. I'd like to share with you some of the avenue we are taking and actually help more and more customers who are taking the same path that we have done to make an exponential positive impact. So let's talk about sustainability and beyond. First, on the scope 3 decarbonization, literally going beyond the scope of our operation and supporting the suppliers in our sustainability. We're empowering people and the community who serve and want to take sustainability to the next level with their own initiative and their own contributions. The most important thing first, he will talk about decarbonization of our own operations effect to make a positive impact to the whole supply chain. We believe we are simply not on track to limit global warming. In this report, we explore the feasibility of such targets. We look at only a subset of energy-related CO2 emission, corresponding to around 30 gigaton of CO2 per year in 2009, the power generation and demand side energy use. While current pledge to the world on 3 gigaton abatement by 2030, which is about 10%, the effort must be 3 to 5 times higher to stand a chance to remain within the target. So our absolute term of 10 to 15 is really the scope we would like to target for 2030. On the one hand, we have the opportunity to reduce energy, the related greenhouse gas, representing over 70% of our emission, including the very now famous carbon, the CO2 emission we all generate. In fact, each of us consume about 6 liters of oil per day, counting all energies we need to work, live, eat, heat and refresh and travel today. Now, consider that nearly 2 billion people, on the other hand, still have no access to energy and come across limitations in terms of human basic right, health, safety, and education. This is where lies the energy paradox. How can we serve more people with energy to thrive, all the while reduce energy-related carbon emissions? And how can we do that in a clean and affordable way? At Schneider Electric, we are optimists, and we don't believe in fate. We believe in tested, proven, validated solution that exists today. And the good news is that these solutions, which we all agree, are going to make a difference if we develop them, if we deploy them at scale and faster than what we are currently doing. Schneider Electric Research Institute most recently study has actually estimated that we can still meet the 1.5 trajectory if we deploy them at a faster pace and at a larger scale than we currently do. In practice, we are talking about 3 pathways to do so. 1, decarbonizing, 2, electrifying, and 3, implementing efficient and circular innovation on the demand side. In our 2030 decarbonization scenario, we find that if we actually deliver on this initiative by 2030, we can actually save a potential of gigaton of annual CO2 emissions. Supply chains emissions are greater by 11 times on average than operational emission. So it is vital for companies to face and address Scope 3 emission and go beyond the scope of supply chain, really the first hurdle we experience and our customer often do as well in the measurement phase. How to collect accurate data in our Scope 3 universe. This proved to be a big challenge. And again, digital technology and software can do that now, and very efficiently, by gathering, processing, and analyzing huge amounts of quantitative and qualitative data. In other words, it means that all emissions from our operational scope will go down to zero with no offset. How do we do that? Save. It means avoid and reduce as much as possible. We commit to double our energy productivity, to phase out SF6 gas from our product and increase our energy efficiency by 10% every 3 years. After save, electrify means switch from fuel-based to electricity-based energy. We commit, for instance, to manage 100% electrical fleet of cars. And third, decarbonize. It means switch to renewable electricity sources. These results can be achieved with no carbon offset. We have set bold, mid, and long-term ambitions, supported by short-term programs to decarbonize our value chain. The following are some among our top strategy to engage with our suppliers to 2025. First, reduce CO2 emission from our top 1,000 suppliers' operation by 50%, which is delivered through the zero carbon projects. 2, increase green material content in our product to 50%, where green materials are defined as responsibly sourced plastic and metals, the environmental impact of which is improved considerably and compared to the market standards. 3, 100% of our primary and secondary packaging is single-use plastic free and uses recyclable cardboard. And finally, 15% CO2 efficiency in transport. From 2018 to 20, we have already helped our customers save and avoid 263 million tons of CO2. By 2025, we will deliver 800 million tons of saved and avoided CO2 to our customer, proving that our impact on the climate is positive through our EcoStruxure solution, and it's happening now. The second topic after decarbonizing is diversity, how it built and how we want to contribute to build an inclusive world. In the true spirit of going beyond the scope, but most importantly, in full alignment with our core values, we also took a commitment with regards to our supply chain to ensure that 100% of our suppliers respect decent work standards. The balance between sustainability, progress, and living up to our trust standard is not negotiable. Another way of tackling the energy paradox. For employees, a safe environment where employees feel confident to report unethical conduct. For workers, throughout the value chain, more than 60% workers lack any kind of employment contract, and 25 million people involved today in forced labors. We need to tackle those challenges. Offer equal opportunities to everyone in our company. That's our commitment. We have a multi-hub model in France, Hong Kong, Boston, and now in India, where really we balance our resources. We want to harness the power of all generations, offering learning and development opportunities to all. Gender diversity, gender pay equity across the company, We define diversity as the right mix of all diversity: gender, cultural, generation, work style, communication style, to name a few. And inclusion, making a mix work. We took this commitment many years ago and we are on the right track to achieve it. Also, equal opportunity for communities. The Schneider Electric Foundation supports future generations and forward-looking initiatives to give as many people as possible the energy they need to succeed. Operating in more than 100 countries, the foundation helps that everyone in local communities access to education and energy. Finally, sustainability and beyond. We need to trace how global commitments impacting local communities. Going beyond is necessary on all ESG fronts. We have our long-term commitments. We act for a climate-positive world, be efficient with resources, live up to our principles of trust, create equal opportunities, and finally, harness the power of all generations. For the next 5 years, we are taking 11 global plus at least one local commitments for more than 100 countries, which we are all accountable for and empowered to contribute to make a positive difference. All Schneider Electric is committed here. Lots to do, lots of challenges. The world needs it. We deserve it. Our customers ask for it. More importantly, we can do it. We have the solutions. Sustainability is at the heart of our purpose to empower all to make the most of our energy and resources. That is bridging progress and sustainability for all. I hope to see you and accompany you in that journey wherever you are and however long it goes. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
Okay, thank you for your wonderful presentation. 저희 두 분.
So, we have heard the two presentations. And right before the presentations began, I was able to discuss with these two speakers about the Q&As and the panel discussion. So we have the two speakers joining us online for our panel discussion and the Q&As. We have about 45 minutes for panel discussion together with the two speakers. And if you have any questions, you may post your questions on our online platform and they will be delivered to me and we will be able to entertain them as well.
Mr. Leaser, actually today we have a bunch of the Korean audiences on spot. So I'd like to switch my language mode into a Korean to explain your kind of summary of your presentations, as well as from time to time I'm gonna add some more facts or more the explanation on top of your the discussions. So, but I'm gonna use the Korean language mode, and you may utilize the simultaneous interpretation. So let us proceed with the discussion in two language modes. Okay? Okay.
Okay, so before we go into the panel discussion, I'd like to discuss what Hosea said in his presentation. We were able to learn that Microsoft has been working hard. As you know, Microsoft is a globally leading cloud computing company. It used to be mainly Office and software an enterprise company, but now it is #1 in terms of its cloud business. And now Microsoft has a separate company called Microsoft Philanthropies, and they are working to increase their social impact by working with various partners. And that was what was discussed and presented in Hosea's presentation, especially focusing on the Asia-Pacific region. I believe that this is a very interesting and important business model because it's not just doing any philanthropy, period, but rather this is something that Microsoft is doing to fulfill their social responsibility, and they are determined to addressing social issues and environmental issues because these are the kinds of challenges faced by our MZ generations. And I think that this is what Microsoft is doing to capture their hearts, and they would be actually willing to use more of Microsoft products because they recognize the social value and impact that Microsoft is contributing to our entire society. So I think that that is actually benefiting Microsoft business as well, while they fulfill their social responsibility. So we can see this very good example of where they pursue business performance and earnings on one hand and pursue ESG at the same time. And I was able to see that Microsoft utilizes digital skills, and also they're focusing on improving digital skills, especially in the Asia-Pacific region. As we see the acceleration of digital transformation, there's this very serious issue of digital divide or digital gap. There are those who are running ahead of other people. There is an increasing gap between different groups, and this will lead to lack of social cohesion, and it may give rise to other social issues. So Microsoft is trying to address this digital divide issue by offering training, and they're working together with government agencies to inform and influence on their policies. And also Microsoft is offering specific training programs so that people can get reskilling trainings. It is maybe something that the government has to do, but it is a private company, Microsoft, that is doing this job. So, but at the same time, the company is working with the governments, so that's very good.
4월 달에
Schneider Electric in April participated in the Hanover Messe. It's a expo. It's an industrial expo, and because of COVID-19, the two major expos, CES and Hanover, were both held online. And in particular, during the online Hanover Expo held in April with the participation of Prime Minister Merkel, at that expo, Schneider Electric had a very big impact. Schneider Electric in Hanover was deemed to be the most active player. I also participated in the CES and Hanover online, and I could see that in terms of net zero, Schneider Electric had very advanced thoughts, and we could see the strong commitment of Schneider Electric for ESG, which we could see through his presentation, and it was very impressive. And against this backdrop, we would now like to start with some prepared questions. We will start with the most important questions. First question to Hosea.
께 질문을 드리겠습니다. 우선 지금
As you mentioned in your presentation, digital skills are becoming more and more important. And in the Asia-Pacific region, Microsoft is working together with governments, and also you are doing capacity building yourselves. So I think there are these two directions that you are taking. Now, when it comes to your partnership with governments, I wonder how you're actually doing it. And what specific roles are you playing, and what specific engagements do you have?
Thank you. That is really, really good question. With different governments, we actually partner with them in different ways. So with some governments, we actually partner with them because they have policies, right? We identify with governments on policies they are working on to help, for example, folks who are affected by COVID-19, by the pandemic. And with the policies that the government pushed out, they are looking at helping the underserved communities get upgraded, get upskilling. And that's where we come in and partner with them on very specific policy-related work to help do a lot of the upskilling. With some of the governments, we also partner with them on integrating the content of Microsoft Philanthropy into their universities. So in countries, for example, like in Bangladesh, we are working with the governments on a potential project to look at embedding the content into their universities, as well as train the trainers with the teachers so that they are better equipped with the knowledge of the current digital skills in order for them to teach the students to allow the students to have actually the relevant skills for employability. So I would say that it's not so straightforward as one strategy, but depending on the government, depending on the country, we actually have a lot more discussions prior and see what works best with the government in order for us to look at that partnership.
Okay. 두 번째는
The second question is about the relationship with the government. So you talked about your relationship with the academia and the regional colleges, and we can see that it also reflects the uniqueness of each local community in coming up with the contents, so that you can also provide services to the underserved groups to provide digital skills along with the government. Thank you very much. So the next question would be about companies.
You mentioned that you're involved in capacity building. So does that mean that Microsoft provides training for digital skills? Do you have any training organization or any specific program, or are you utilizing the existing institutions or training institutions? How do you do capacity building for digital skills for the underserved communities?
Thank you. Thank you for the great question again. When we talk about capacity building, we look at it from multiple fronts as well. So one way we look at it, we always look at who are the partners on the ground that will work with us in order for us to partner with the government. A lot of times it is not just Microsoft and the government. We also pull in non-profit partners or government partners to look at the implementation, right? Just because the scope is very big for Microsoft, it covers a lot of countries across Asia Pacific. As I mentioned in my presentation, we don't have the tools, nor the skills, nor the relationships for everything. And that's why partnerships is very, very important for Microsoft in order for us to look at implementation. So we work with some of the non-profit organizations, for example, in implementing the partnership. Let me give you an example of in Thailand itself, where we work with the Thai government, but we also work with UNESCO, because UNESCO has a lot of partnerships with the local community centers across the whole of Thailand, right? As we did the numbers, there are about 7,400 community centers across Thailand, and we do capacity building of the teachers and the trainers in the community center, right? We teach them and give them the tools, we give them the learning platforms, we work with them on the content as well as the teaching methodology, and then they are able to do the teaching in the communities, in the rural areas, that's all across Thailand. Once again, like I said, the method really depends on which country and which government, and what are the ready resources as well as the ready infrastructure that's already available in the country itself.
Thank you very much. As you explained, what you're doing is very impressive.
정말 놀랐는데요. 우리나라
So it's really wonderful, and I was quite pleasantly surprised. And I hope that there will be more Korean companies that are doing something similar to Microsoft is doing. And in Asia Pacific, Korean government is providing ODA, official development assistance, and our ODA size is very big. So we used to receive aid, but now we're providing assistance, and it's actually more than 2 trillion won per year. So that's actually $2 billion annually. This means that Korea is spending quite a lot of money helping other countries in the region. And so maybe we can get this idea from Microsoft by forging partnerships between us and the government and also other agencies, like in the case of Thailand. So there are these NGOs and community centers. And in Thailand, as you mentioned, they have the UNESCO Thailand. The Thai UNESCO is involved. And you explained that there are more than 7,400 community centers that we can utilize, right? So this is a wonderful approach. And so I would say that these people who receive help from Microsoft directly or indirectly will become future users or customers of Microsoft.
Next goes to Mr. Leisure. 우리 리서치에
So, Mr. Eric Leisure, well, you talked about Schneider Electric, and many of the countries have committed to net zero by 2050. And that's actually using offset. So that is the ambition for Korea as well. The US and Europe have also announced these goals. China has made a commitment to 2060. And so commitments are being made around the world. And in that process, companies will be asked to comply with these goals. I was very surprised to see that Schneider Electric by 2025 has the goal to achieve net zero within the company itself. That is quite amazing. And so that's just 5 years away. Schneider Electric is a manufacturing company, and most people believe that manufacturing companies are at a bigger difficulty in achieving net zero. But in just 5 years, you are committed to net zero. That is quite surprising. And you also talked about the upstream, which means that you will be including suppliers in your ambitious goal. And this will include all the way from the sourcing of raw materials, and it will also include logistics involved for raw materials. And so that is your very ambitious goal for 2025 set by Schneider Electric. Based on this experience, for different governments and different companies around the world, you are willing to provide services so that they can also achieve net zero. So having said that, Schneider Electric, what kind of support will you provide to governments? And second, to companies, what kind of support are you providing? If Korean companies wish to receive help from Schneider Electric, what would be the process? I think, according to your presentation, you talked about how you were working in Korea from 2008. And so I'm sure that you are very knowledgeable about Korea. And so if Korean companies wish to receive consulting or other forms of help related to net zero from Schneider Electric, what would be the process?
정부, 기업,
So government, companies, Korean companies.
As I say, we started a long time ago in Schneider Electric. So this is obviously an ambitious goal for 2025, but this is something we have started a long way back. I think this is at the core of what we do. Sustainability is why we're here. I think we are part of the solution, and we want to bring our people with us. I think just like Microsoft said it, we are certainly all committed to help drive this sustainability. And from 2005, we have started to monitor and measure our impact on the planet, our impact on sustainability with the first sustainability barometer of any large organization. So we have saved hundreds of millions of tons of CO2 since then. And our commitment to companies is to assist them. And it starts with an assessment, okay, of their carbon footprint, an assessment of their supply chain, an assessment of their manufacturing capacity, and how together we could hand in hand start to evaluate where we see potential. And we always start with this assessment by measuring, because when you measure, then you can control. We start by tracking energy and try to look for efficiencies, tracking industrial automation and how the process are automated and how we can bring productivity and assist them to save on energy, to monitor and control their energy. So for this, we have teams around the world. There are consultants, there are sustainability consultants, and we go about this discussion with the companies. Yes, I was in Seoul in 2008 to 2013, 14, leading Schneider Electric. And at the time, many local companies started to look at sustainability more from a social responsibility, more from a brand image standpoint. And gradually they see also the financial benefit. They see the social benefit as it is an attractive, obviously, asset to get the best talent in the market. So we see that to be a necessity, and we see that to be an asset for company to go about this journey.
Great. 아까 마지막 질문 한.
Well, I think you may have missed the last question. If Korean companies were to receive consulting from Schneider Electric, was that possible to receive consulting?
Yeah, so we have what we call an energy and sustainability service business, where we advise thousands of global companies on how to measure, manage, reduce their carbon footprint. This is the world's largest corporate renewable energy advisor. We obviously are working all across the planet, in Korea as well. We are touching companies in Korea for now, over 20 years around this topic and this particular service. Typically, we, as I said earlier, we would start by assessing the position of the company, looking at its manufacturing footprint, looking at its logistic footprint, and be an energy advisor, if you want, to try to help them tackle all these related challenges, their challenge and the one of their supplier, because as you rightfully mentioned earlier, we have and we continue to focus on reducing our supplier footprint. By 50%, we cut their CO2 emission over the last few years, and that's really the focus or the obsession we're having to drive this in Korea as well. Korea, like many Asian countries, is paying a stronger attention to the ESG framework and initiative. Sometimes there's a lack of unified standards, and it makes it a bit difficult for an investor to judge whether it's truly ESG or it's a bit of greenwashing. But the domestic companies tend to really focus on environment. There is, I think, a strong divestment in coal-related business in Korea. There is a promotion for eco-friendly product. There is green bonds that are issued. So many companies are actually committed to this carbon neutrality in 2050, which is a big target and which is an ambitious target. But yet we try to get them to do that a little bit earlier as the transition to renewable energy and digitization, we heard it with the guest from Microsoft, has an enormous potential to help reduce the global emissions. So where we see maybe a gap is eventually on the other element of the ESG, maybe on the governance, the corporate governance, with the legacy of your big, powerful business empire in Korea. I think there's a need for maybe more balanced authority, more responsibility, eventually more transparency for the governance to truly benefit everybody.
오케이. 정말 좋은 말씀이고요.
Thank you for your remarks. If we take a look at the case of Schneider Electric, one of the big trends in manufacturing these days is the combination of manufacturing and service. Schneider Electric started as a manufacturing company, for example, factory automatization or energy efficiency management. So you started with manufacturing different equipment. So you are essentially a hardware company. Of course, you did have software that went into such hardware, but basically you were a manufacturing company. But based on the know-how that you have accumulated as a manufacturing company, you have expanded into services, in particular to provide consulting to other companies based on your know-how. So you can see that there's a combination of these two business models, which should be benchmarked by many Korean companies, I believe. From that aspect...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, when we look at the evolution, we all have started in the hardware business, and we were pretty much a product and system engineering company, very strong in manufacturing. When you look at obviously the digitization, the capacity we have to get data insights, data analytics from every flow of energy that goes through our technology, it becomes obvious that digitization software and all related service, whether they are on the field, in the factory, or remote digital services, becomes essential. And the last 18 months has accelerated the need for remote assistance, for remote support. So certainly the evolution of Schneider has been from this legacy of hardware manufacturing to an extension towards software, towards solution. We have built, and actually we partner with Microsoft Azure globally on their cloud solution on our EcoStruxure platform, which is for us an Internet of Things, right? An IoT-enabled architecture, an open platform for hardwares to connect and give data insights in order to improve your manufacturing, improve your building management, and drive efficiency, drive energy efficiency there. So that's for us some of the transformation we have built for homes, for building, for data centers, for where the connected product has made a huge acceleration. We have now 10 times more machines that are connected than humans. So we see a great acceleration of that. And with our EcoStruxure, we have in Korea a factory which we call a smart factory in Iksan, actually, located down in the south in Iksan, where we have adopted these smart solutions. And from the energy consumption that we have to the capacity we have to manage its energy management, its automation, I think remotely we can control and measure and help reduce on our carbon footprint. So that's really some of the good examples we're having in these sort of congregations of technology.
Thank you very much for your additional explanation. Well, the area that you mentioned is an area that is very difficult to translate because you probably need to be aware of the technical jargon. And because it's very important, I would like to iterate the answer. So Schneider Electric started as a hardware company, but going through digitization and digital transformation, Schneider Electric actually focused on data as the core. When you collect data from manufacturing, then you can build the capacity for data analytics. These days, we are using AI for data analytics. This can then evolve into services. For example, services that can remotely monitor specific facilities and equipment, and you can also do preemptive maintenance using these data analytics. And this is a concept of IoT, which means that all things are connected by the internet, which would enable remote monitoring and remote control of facilities. Microsoft has Azure as the cloud computing system, and so Schneider Electric must be using the cloud system of Microsoft, and through that collaboration, because Azure provides very strong AI capabilities, Schneider Electric is able to analyze a vast amount of data, creating a whole ecosystem. So we start from the hardware, we go to services and solutions, and we can see that the business model of Schneider Electric continues to evolve based on this track. And just like Mr. Leeser has mentioned, we were able to build energy efficiency at Schneider Electric, as well as efficiency of tasks that are performed on site. We also could improve quality based on data. And to take that a step further, well, Mr. Laser did not mention this, but one other important fact is business models. So we go from hardware to software to services and in this evolution, we also need to see the evolution of business models. We have a smart factory in Iksan built by Schneider. I would also like to have an opportunity to visit there to see the remote management and control.
Smart factory in Iksan. So I really love to visit there. Please allow me have the chance to visit. Okay, yeah. 그래서
And so that was a very important response that we had from Mr. Ledger. And what was very interesting from Schneider was that the ambitious goal of achieving net zero by 2025 was not a goal that they set overnight. It did not happen overnight. It took a long time, and it was in the process for a long time. Schneider not only wanted to fulfill its social responsibilities, it was not just about a reputational issue, but Schneider had the vision that this will be a core competitiveness in the future. And so Schneider already worked on not only the internal carbon footprint, but also the supply chain. And so the carbon footprint was measured, and you need to measure in order to control. And so that is why they started to measure, control, and track. And not only did they apply this to manufacturing, but also logistics and transportation. And because they have done this, these results are possible. It cannot happen overnight. That was quite inspiring for us. Mr. Ledger worked in Korea, and he also noticed that Korean companies were interested in ESG, but it seems that we have to differentiate ESG with greenwashing. Are they willing to include ESG as a core part of their business model? So we have to take a look at the intentions of these companies. I believe that more and more Korean companies are true to ESG. From that aspect, we look forward to more opportunities in Korea so that we can work on net zero and ESG so that we can become a company like Schneider Electric or Microsoft. It was indeed very relatable and inspiring. The next question is from me.
또 하나 이제 정말 오늘 주제가
In this session, we're discussing digital transformation and ESG in this session. So you can see this connection between digital transformation and ESG. What is the relationship between digital transformation and ESG? Are these two elements separate? No, not at all. They are all interconnected and they're very closely related. So in pursuing digital transformation, we improve our efficiency and then also we need to improve efficiency in terms of using our resources and energy. So I think the overall direction is the same for both digital transformation and ESG. And at the same time, digital transformation can be a very good enabler, and digital technologies are tools for ESG implementation. So I'd like to ask a question to Hosea first. In Microsoft, how are you connecting digital transformation and ESG? How do you use digital technology and transformation to improve ESG aspect of business operation? So this is my question to Hosea. And to Schneider, how is your company using digital transformation and technology to implement ESG? So the role of digital transformation in your ESG journey. So first, Hosea.
Thank you for the question. This is actually a great question. The world has shifted, and the world has shifted so much, right? One of the things that we strongly believe at Microsoft is that data drives everything. And digital transformation is the way for us to actually, have the right tools for us to drive even greater impact in ESG. There are so many things that this world is coming to, right? And if we base it on how we feel, right, and this is the direction we want to go, it does not give us kind of a vision or a right direction. Through digital transformation and the use of data for us, Microsoft is able to pinpoint, for example, how do we therefore move? How do we therefore implement the right programs? How do we get the right partnerships in? One of the things that we do at Microsoft Philanthropies specifically is using AI for good, right? And we call it AI for good in a broader term. And there are multiple pillars towards the AI for good. So we have, for example, if it's concerning environment, we do have AI for Earth. Right? If it's concerning health, we actually do have AI for health. And then we have AI for accessibility to help, like, for example, persons with disabilities. And then we have actually a few more. But I give you a few examples of how AI and technology and digital transformation has actually helped from an ESG perspective, from an environment perspective, from a social perspective as well. So, for example, in terms of AI for Earth, what we have done in terms of AI for Earth is a project in India where we actually develop AI to predict disasters that are going to happen, whether it's flood or hurricanes, or a heat wave. And we have implemented in one of the towns, in a rural area. And we have actually averted actually multiple deaths as well as losses through the past few years. And that actually, because of AI, we were able to predict things that are about to come, and then we give a warning system to the villages and to the towns. So that's from an AI for Earth perspective. From an AI for health perspective, we will also we developed a system in one of the countries in Asia. And we actually picked up data on tuberculosis, right? And when we picked that up, we were able to give heat sensing kind of like where all the cases are, and we are able to preempt and predict and inform the local authorities so that they know that potentially there's a tuberculosis epidemic that's happening, and they can come in and treat it earlier rather than let the situation, you know, go out of hand. So that's from a AI for health perspective. And then from an AI for accessibility perspective, we are partnering Starbucks, for example, in China, where we actually use technology and AI to help persons with disabilities work in a Starbucks store. So we did up the technology to convert sign language into actual language and language back into sign language on a digital platform. And that talks about, you know, digital transformation. We talk about AI, we use technology, we use data, and that solves a lot of environment issues as well as social issues. And that's what we do, you know, in one aspect of Microsoft, to use technology to look at digital transformation, to create solutions for the earth, for health, for the world, for the people.
네, 아주 정말 좋습니다.
Thank you very much for your wonderful remarks. So as you mentioned, digital transformation plays a very critical role in implementing ESG and making social and environmental impact, because we utilize AI and data and digital technologies. And there were very specific examples which were very helpful. As you mentioned before, we can use AI to predict floods or droughts or natural disasters, and we can also predict the spread of certain epidemics and also increase accessibility for visually impaired or hearing impaired, so that they can work in Starbucks, for instance. So these were very specific examples how we can see digital technology and AI can be used to increase social impact and environmental impact. Thank you.
Mr. Leeser, what is the Schneider Electric case?
You know, our world is made of this acceleration that we have seen in the last few months, where digitization and overnight everybody has to be remote, right? So we are facing that, and it's going very fast. I was telling you earlier that we have 10 times more new connected objects today than individuals, and this is now, it has happened. The volume of data is exploding everywhere around the world. In 2017, it was about 80 million gigabytes. Today, in 2021, it's 400 billion gigabytes. So while the energy demand will continue to increase, however, we need to curb the trend of this global warming and the climate disorders we see everywhere, particularly caused by these fossil resources and its combustions. And that accounts for a large proportion of today's energy generating resources. So the key is how quickly we're going to turn this new energy demand into a green energy source. And that requires energy generation, energy transmission, energy distribution, management methods. And that's all data. Only digitization, only data analytic, data insights can enable us to measure and monitor that. So that is changing our whole vision of the world. And even the consumers are actually concerned, as they increasingly need to prepare for the type of energy they will use and how responsible they need to be and eco-friendly they need to be in front of energy consumption. So we heard about artificial intelligence for good, and I love that concept. It should be a contribution to how people perform, how we augment the capacity of human being, and in companies, how does it help us to do better, to do good. So today we tend to, obviously, for a portion of it, look at AI with a fear or with a sense of a lack of control and regulation, and I think that's an important aspect of it. But what we need to remember is the road for success, as we see it in Schneider, comes first from a people-centric views, starting enabling people to use data, to do great with data, and make better, if you want, AI-powered applications to augment and assist our capacity to have a positive impact. And quite frankly, with this COVID-19, we have seen the change in this environment quite drastically for all of us, but it didn't change our real priority. I mean, it has just probably forced and pushed harder the tough questions that we all need to address for this planet to continue to be more sustainable and for human beings to be able to flourish. So digitization is an enabler, as you see, as you know, and as you mentioned, Mr. Chu.
오케이. 역시
Yes, I think a common thread for all of our dialogue today is that data is at the center of digitization. And so data will be the fundamental for digitization. It will be a fundamental for AI and also other forms of technologies. We have heard the cases of the two companies.
We'd better hurry up. 그래서 지금 이제 저 플로어에 질문이 몇 개 들어.
We do have some questions from the floor, and I think because we have enjoyed this dialogue, some of the questions have already been answered. So excluding those questions, we will go to unique questions.
이코노미에 대한
This question is about hydrogen economy. Maybe this can be answered by Ledger from Schneider.
수소 경제
So in hydrogen economy, what is your view of hydrogen economy? And within the next 3 decades, what would be a way to achieve hydrogen economy without enormous investments, so within the budget?
economy in conjunction with the limited budget within 30 years.
You see, the domain in which we are, which is electrification, demand for energy is growing. And everywhere we look, we see new population that needs more energy. We see new devices that we all possess now that needs to be electrified at night and charged again. So hydrogen will certainly have benefit to help move to a more sustainable energy economy. And certainly, I think we have a certain numbers of countries, including for their automotive industry, that rely on this for the long term and for the future. That is going to be, for the future, a big asset. But you're right, there's a huge and significant asset investment requirement that comes with hydrogen. And to make it at scale today is not the first trend that we have seen manufacturers, automotive manufacturing, including that have generally taken in Europe and in North America. I know for Hyundai and for some certain automotive company, they have started this way. There is also some safety concern that the public may have related to it. So that, for me, that's one of the way. And today, not one company have the solution, but it's partnership. I heard my colleague from Microsoft speaking about partnering. This is a time for us to test, learn, iterate, and continue to progress collectively. And hydrogen is one of the possibilities we need to continue to invest and innovate.
네, I agree with you. 그러니까 결국은
So in a nutshell, as you have mentioned, it will require immense investments. In the end, we have to look to partnerships. There are hydrogen alliances that are being formed around the world. This is not something that can be shouldered by any one country or any one company. And so we need to go through a cycle of testing and iteration and go through trial and error. And we do look forward to hydrogen economy as a good alternative, especially for a country like us where we have a strong automotive industry. Hydrogen could become an important tool. And so that is probably the need that we have.
같은데요.
This is going to be the last question. I would like to ask this question to Hosea. Microsoft is implementing ESG programs, and reskilling and upskilling seem to be your priorities of many other priorities. and you believe in that. And why is skilling or upskilling is so important for you?
That is actually the fundamental question that it's so important and critical. We all know that, you know, I've worked almost more than 20 years in the social impact space. I started off working in a non-profit organization, an NGO, and we know that helping people get out of poverty is not by providing them with food, right? By providing them with things. Right? I mean, in my own personal experience, one of the key things on how me and my family, I was the first generation undergraduate with a degree, and the way we got out of so-called poverty was actually through education. And therefore, the priority of putting skilling and upskilling, which is part of education, is critical for us to bring more people out of the poverty cycle, to bring more people into the digital economy. The reality is, as the world proceeds on, especially after the pandemic, right, this world is going to convert more and more into a digital economy. And we need to bring people who are not ready, equip them with the right skills, and upskill them so that they are ready for the digital economy. And it's a win-win on so many fronts. It's a win for the people who are underserved and being equipped with the right skills. It's a win for the country and the government because you are bringing people and upgrading people to join and participate in the economy. You are able to have the right people with the right skills to participate in bringing up and growing the economy and not spending the bulk of your money helping people in terms of the beneficiary kind of mindset, right? And I think that's where it actually, from a digital skilling perspective, it impacts on so many levels, on a personal level, on a community level, on a government level, at a country level, and at a global level. And that's why to us at Microsoft, digital skilling is so important.
네, 옳은 것 같습니다. 사람이
I believe you are right. People are everything.
data is everything, and then people is everything. 정말 좋은 말씀. 1시간 반 동안
So for the past 1 hour and a half, we have had very intensive and productive discussion. I really enjoyed this conversation. Let's give a big round of applause to the two speakers for their wonderful contribution. Thank you so much.
and great contribution to this forum today. I really appreciate that. I hope to see you again very soon. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. 감사합니다.
자, 여러분
Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that you found the session informative. It is indeed a very important topic of digital transformation and ESG. They work hand in hand, and through digital transformation, we can achieve ESG. And we look forward to many companies and governments and research organizations joining the journey towards digital transformation and ESG. We look forward to your success. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much. A big round of applause to our moderator, please. Thank you very much. This brings us to the end of our session titled Digital Transformation and ESG. The moderator mentioned that they go hand in hand. In line with such trends, industries and services are being diversified. Based on the presentations that we have heard, we need to think about how to apply this to the Republic of Korea. This brings us to the end of session A-3. We have come to the end of day 1 of the Global HR Forum 2021. For the sustainable future and sustainable society, we have heard various presentations from various perspectives. We have had rich dialogue, but I think the message is the same. The power in changing the future comes from people. And so, everyone here today at the Global HR Forum is indeed enjoying a very meaningful gathering. I do hope that the talent of the future will be able to see the blueprint for the future. We will continue with day 2 tomorrow at 9 o'clock with the special lecture by Secretary General Oh Moo-jong of the Asia Development Bank, followed by 4 sessions. We look forward to your interest and participation. Thank you for joining us from early this morning, both online and offline. This brings us to the end of day 1 of Global HR Forum 2021. Have a great evening, and we will see you tomorrow. I am Chang San-young. Thank you.